That's what I'm hearing. I've been working with Inanna all week, and I love this energy with all of my being. And I think that that's a good place to open, because this is going to be an interesting, and it might even be a tough reading. And I love, and like very rarely do we get, we've been getting songs lately, but the last time we got this one, ready or not, here I come, da-na-na. And I don't even know that. I'm gonna find you and make you love me. I don't even know if that's the lyrics, but I can feel like the way that it's actually a hum that is moving through me. And so when we come into the presence of Inanna, there's a lot that we have to understand. She is the Queen of Heaven, but she has also succumbed to the damned. And in her resurrection, she had to rise with the knowledge of life and death. And in doing so, she left an aspect of herself in that knowing, with that knowing. And there is always this relationship between our life and our death resurrection cycles. And I don't think it's an accident that this reading is coming out on Easter. It is a coincidence insofar as, like, this is just confirmation for me. Inanna showed up after I had called out for a mother. And there's a little story with that, but I do want to get some cards out on the table. You know, today is Easter. I'm filming this the day before, but this is meant to come out on Easter, and the sun has risen. She has risen. Inanna has risen. We are not left out of a holiday. We are reclaiming it. This is a reclamation. Ishtar Easter. When the Romans came to make their religion of empire, and they stole Jesus's voice, and they said, we're going to use this to make capitalism. And they did. They were very smart about what they did. They had envy take over, as envy usually does. But the power, you know, wasn't diminished, and the reclamation is here with Inanna. And so as we celebrate Easter, as we celebrate the rising of the life and death rebirth cycle, there are those of you with the Ten of Pentacles that will be entering the Six of Wands resurrection. You will be receiving your resurrection with this reading. And there are those of you that will enter into your descent as well. And I don't want you to be afraid, because what we're talking about here with this Four of Wands, with this reunion with self, this reclamation, it means in one way or another, we're going to enter an archetype, and we're going to find ourselves either in the shadow or the light, either at the resurrected aspect or as the aspect that needs to let things die. It needs to give voice and grief and mourning to those deaths. And neither of those places are better or worse. They're just like a necessary part of a cycle that either gives birth to what it is for you to live, or begins your decay. And you have to be on the cycle of death and rebirth, or you get stuck in decay, or you get stuck trying to run it, you know, outrun it. And that just makes the decays like faster. Yeah. And so with the Sun card being about clarity, the Six of Wands being about victory, that Ten of Pentacles being about an inheritance, and that Four of Wands being a union and a reclamation of self, that's what this reading is about today. And so we're entering with Inanna, who, what a beautiful energy she is. I got portraits of the goddesses that I work with. I started to do forensic description. This is going to be a little bit hard to explain, but I think I'm going to get into it. I had a beautiful experience this week when I was working with Inanna, because she's been teaching me a lot about what it is to encounter Ereshkigal. Ereshkigal, and I hope I'm saying that well, it's a symbol to me. Ereshkigal. And it's her sister. Inanna's story is that she is the Queen of Heaven, and as the Queen of the Heaven, she shines, and all who look upon her see her stature and her status and her position, and like the sun, she is radiant and resplendent, like all the R's that just came through with her. And she is the front-facing self. She's the version of yourself that is your front-facing self, the ruler of your perspective and how you view yourself, and how you view and like how you're perceived, and the bounty and the harvest on all of that. And it's very much earned. It's a position that is very much earned. It's that shine. I see like the Leo. And so with the storm, being a very big part of this, and the eternal child, and the bottom of the deck being the venom. What Ereshkigal represents is the voice of the wisdom that got her there. It is the part of her that had to split off during the not the descent, but during the ascent. During the ascent, something very heavy, something too heavy to hold, too hellish to manage, had to be let go in order for her to stand up and front face and bring her beauty to the fore and be radiant and resplendent and of high and like worshipful Queen of Heaven status. But there's a part of her that is deep. There's a part of her that is hurt. There's a part of her that is heavy, that has to express itself, that needs to find its expression, that is a part of her death and rebirth cycle. For every cycle of expansion where you grow into the part of yourself that feels like you can take on it all, you are, resplendent and radiant, and this is the way the world sees you, and it's the way that you want to be seen, and you're stepping into your power, and you're enacting that power, and you are ruling from your throne. For every moment that is that rebirth and that resurrection, there's also the death that informs the power that is the foundation that you are standing on with that position. And that growth cycle, is required. We don't just like stand as the pinnacle of beauty and the impressive. Like we also have all of the dark, like hurt that makes up the strength of the armor that we present when we present to the world. And so that eternal child is about this incredible quality and this like beauty. And then the storm is something that comes in to disrupt this. That death and rebirth cycle kind of has to happen. It comes in to disrupt this. And so let's get some cards on that, because one of the things that Inanna said when I started working with her today, and this is a painful reading for me, because every time I hit, I go into the Inanna energy and I'm like, yes, resplendent, gorgeous, like radiant, like this is where I want to be, like this is the strength I want to be seen from. Like I'll swing back and I'll hit Ereshkigal because I'll be like, I don't, I'll bump into that part of me that is like, I don't want to express myself. I don't want to open myself as a channel to the divine and bring it through all of my wounds and all of my pain. I don't want to, like, there's this other side of Inanna, and there's this other side of that cycle that we're looking at with that venom energy right there. And we've looked at it as an envy because that's how it expresses a lot of times. We've looked at it as supremacy because envy always takes a supremacist stance. Oh, because of my and wisdom, like you down there, And we've talked about it in the form of tyranny, and it takes place. That's where that's this shadow, dark, gross, yeek energy always inhabits those spaces. It always exists in the lies that people tell about themselves and they tell about others. That's where all that stuff is. And so, this encounter with the eternal child and the sun, this is like there is no rival. There can be no rival. What you express when you express love and into creation and into what you are creating, when there's that alchemy of love, and when you are worshiping and praising with that relationship with the divine, where you are naked, you have no clothes on, you are not performing, you are not bringing a petition, you do not come as a beggar or a thief. You're literally in your naked, like, eternal child, mommy, pick me up, I'm just me, I don't offer anything else. You love me because when you look at me, I'm your baby, and you see me, and there is no greater love because it's not earned. It is. All the stuff that is around that isn't that. This is where we have unexpressed stuff that is tough, And so let's take a look and see what we have here. Because the Arashkagal energy is bitter. It doesn't want to show up. It doesn't feel, like it wants to be seen. It's the fear of perception, really. Because when Inanna descends the 7 gates to see her sister Ereshkigal, who is living in the underworld, in the pit of hell, in a pit of venom, and in a pile of what has been discarded and unexpressed, in order for her to show up as the resplendent, the parts of you that have to go so that you can be the resplendent. There's a voice in those parts, and it is a deep, oh haunting, and it catches up to you. And so when Inanna knows that she has to meet this sister, she has to face her, she has to descend that 7 layers down, she's got to get rid of her, of how she's perceived, and she has to go with that very like intimate, authentic self. A lot of people don't even know how to access that, and they don't know where that voice comes from, and they don't even know what that voice is, and they don't know why they don't have it, and they do have it, and they don't have it, and what does it mean? And I think that like all of that is at the heart of what it means to talk about this storm. So let's get into that. Let's get some cards. Because both these energies are in all of us, and both of these energies like play a part in our awakening and our sustaining and the defense right there. And there is the King. This Moon card here, especially with this, a lot of our guides and a lot of the gods that I work with, you know, I've got a couple of names that they call me by, and one of them is definitely the messenger. And so, and all week Inanna has been telling me, like, don't apologize, like, don't like make it more palatable, don't conjunct yourself into, you know, something that's easier to digest if you put your, you know, weaknesses on display. Like, if we call you the messenger, we call you the messenger, and you stand in it. And so like I'm going through my rebirth process, and part of that rebirth process is like the Ereshkigal in me that has like been forced to apologize for existing, because, you know, the possible, like there's so many ways in which I have been fucking brutalized this way. And I'm bringing my personal stuff into it here with the Moon card, because, you know, when we put on a show of the impressive, when we show up and we're like, you know, look at what I can do, here is my skill set, and all you're seeing of me, and all you are knowing of me, and your whole concept of me is my savant skill, then you don't see anything. You don't see me at all. I'm invisible. I do not exist. And that's that Moon card here. And so, you know, this is how we like dehumanize each other all the time, because we're only able to take a snapshot. And whether the snapshot you take of me or another is, you know, that savant skill set, and then the story that is built around what it must mean and feel like and be, or it's like some story that you think you know, or somebody, you know, all of these things are, we are all just artist renderings of each other, until we are able to meet at that level of intimacy, and we're able to actually like step into that communion and that sacred space where authentic expression is appreciated and safe, because there's not a place in this world, in each of us, where authentic expression is safe. If authentic expression in your own body is not safe, and whenever you have an experience of it, you feel like you overshared, or you showed up too big, or you showed up too small, or it wasn't properly appreciated. I mean, all the ways that we have this relationship with Arashkagal, because Arashkagal is the truth, the authentic expression. And a lot of times she is sacrificed in order for us to show up as the resplendent. There's a good tarot reader. Her name is Jess Plunkett, and I always forget her handle, but I think if you put that in YouTube, you're gonna find her. She used a phrase that I heard her say, and it was addicted to being the favorite. You know, like we can become addicted to that being the favorite, and then, you know, and never even spend time with the parts of ourselves that are in need of being heard and witnessed and expressed. And so when we think about like this Moon card, and we think about like all these kind of cards out here, let me move this all around. We are all this eternal child. We are all the, in one way or another, the Messiah. The word Messiah just means the messenger. That's the only thing it means. It doesn't mean like special daddy's narcissist golden child, special, perfect, favorite. No, like it means like messenger, you know, like that's it. And the messenger is always going to be like a complicated thing too, because the message and the messenger are not one, but they are related. And you have your own message, and you have your authentic expression within you. And the reason why it's so important for us to look at the mechanics of your death and rebirth process is because when the gears get clogged, when that authentic expression within yourself is no longer safe in your own body, because there's too much cringe that you say, you do something and you put it, you know, you make make something and you look at yourself and you cringe and you erase it and you run away and you're angry, you know, or you make something and someone handles it the wrong way and now you're never going to make anything ever again because they didn't do it right. Or you make something and it was the most beautiful thing, but then it like just reminded you of how like unwitnessed your expression is. And so, you know, all like that's Ereshkigal energy, that expression that gets like choked in the wheel. And so if authentic expression is not safe in you because you're not able to do it, because she got, you know, that Snow White version of yourself got sent out into the woods for execution, or if it's only safe in like intimate settings, or if it's only safe in a certain kind of way, or if you have to express with the resplendent in order for the little bit of her voice to you know, have a place, this is where we get really tangled. And this is where we are not safe with each other in community, because if it's not safe with you, authentic expression, then it's not safe for you to see it in somebody else either. And that's going to be pervasive in every direction, because not because everybody's bad or because we're all bad, because we're all Arashkagal. Everybody, you know, to one extent or another. And if we're not, if you have reached that point where you haven't, and there's no reaching that point. I want to get into that actually, because there's no reaching that point. You're going to have to death and rebirth over and over and over and over again, all your whole long life. Oh, you live long life, you know. You're going to be doing it, that whole shuffle, you know, I'm the best, I'm resplendent, like, oh my gosh, no, wait, there's something that needs to express, and it needs to express like through my descent. And so let's start looking at this descent, the 7 gates of Inanna's descent, because, you know, with the 3 of Wands, the 10 of Cups, oh, I love this 10 of Cups, that's really beautiful. I'm seeing images come alive for me. I see them I really do see them moving as moving images, these little, like, it's kind of Hogwartsy in that movie sort of way. And like, this is really cool. This is a really cool scene. I'll come back to it in a second. But with that 7 of Wands, that Queen of Cups, that 3 of Swords, that Lover's card, and that 10 of Swords, we're gonna do the whole cycle here. Wow, look at that. All right, let's get some more cards. So, Ereshkigal is going to be our unexpressed everythings. Now, there was something that I have to kind of like, I'm coping with a lot of change in myself right now. I'm coping with a lot of like, how do I show up? What does it mean to show up? And when I do show up, what am I doing with my expectations? Like, what's happening? And I'm doing my own like whole like death and rebirth kind of moment right here. And that's like what the storm is. But, you know, when it comes to the 6 of Wands, that victory and that resurrection, you know, that victory and that resurrection speaks of, if the hero comes home and has done the work, has done the descent into the 7 layers down, and has come back from those 7 layers into the pit of hell and found that voice. When we talk about authentic expression, we're not talking about the resplendent. The resplendent is a performance. Authentic expression is when you go and you find the Ereshkigal, and you spend time with Ereshkigal, and you learn from Ereshkigal. That is the only way you're going to ever resurrect, with the wisdom that puts you on the throne. And if you haven't earned that throne, then the descent, that moment when Inanna arises, you know, she goes and sees who's on the throne, and if it hasn't been properly earned, that person now takes her place in the underworld. And so this cycle is, you know, it's not just a cycle that we live through within ourselves. It's a cycle that we are in relationship to each other, and in relationship to how we treat Arashkagal, authentic expression in yourself, authentic expression in others, because it's not a performance. And you have been so drilled with it is performance that this is going to be the hardest undoing of this worldview, is the undoing around what is and is not authentic expression, and what is and is not being. Is being sitting there in your is, like the I am, is, always is, I'm sitting, I'm being. Being is. Being is not just is. This came through somebody's reading this week. Being is not just like being and sitting and me. That's not being. Being is expressing Ereshkigal. It's witnessing and expressing Ereshkigal and liberating her and letting her take on the crown and her be in this Six of Wands where you walk among men and walk among them and women, and you have gone to the depths. You have met Ereshkigal. You bring back her wisdom and her expression, and that puts you in this Six of Wands. That's that resonance. Authenticity is 400 times more powerful than love because it's Arashkagal. She is resplendent, but she is resplendent at a place of depths. And if we do not properly grant her access, if we do not properly see her in ourselves, we can't really get it in each other either. And we become really dangerous with the shadows there, because what happens with Ereshkigal is as soon as the resplendent, the perfect, the beautiful, the this is how I am seen, is going to go, and she's going to find her authentic voice, and she's going to go those 7 layers down. And who's she going to meet? She's going to meet something that she has silenced and choked out, and it's going to scream, and it's going to kill her, and she's going to be hung on a hook in the underworld, and there's no getting out until something comes to witness her. And so when we have this 3 of Wands, where is this, bounty with this 10 of where's the things I love? What is desire? What does it mean to be filled with the anointing and the spirit and the ability and the divine genius and the procreating and the having life be what we expect it to be in terms of this cycle that brings us to our rebirth? This is hard for everyone, and everyone sucks at this in one way or another. This is the hardest shit in the entire world, because what does it mean to show up without the resplendent? What does it mean to show up without your crown? So let's start descending those 7 gates. Let's start at the first gate. So Inanna goes to meet her sister, Arashkagal, because she needs that authentic expression, because she can't really rule legitimately. She can't really create legitimately and hold that 400 times, resonance, unless she does that inner work. And so she wants to get in touch with that part of herself. She wants to have that experience. And so the first thing that she has to do is she's got to go to gate 1. And first thing that the gate 1 descent into hell, is going to be her royal dignity, her resplendent, her crown. First thing that she's got to let go at that 3 of Wands place of expectation. How am I seen? I am expecting to see this mirror. You got to get rid of the expectation, the performance, the resplendent, that front-facing supremacy, really, because we all have to go into this world with an armor. The second, the reality of what it is to be in this world, and there's a real reality to reckon with when it means to be in this world. The reality of what it means to be in this world is that it's just not safe here. It's really, really not that safe here. I'm really having trouble with this message because I hate bumping up against Ereshkigal. I mean, every single time I do, and I'm like, fuck, you know what I mean? I don't want to be near this energy because I carry so much of it. I carry so much unexpressed rage, at the lack of recognition that it has nothing to do with the kind of praise that you see with fandom, and the kind of praise that you see with anything that's worshipy. It's not even the kind of stuff that you see between guru and or it's just something where I have fought so hard all of my life to speak with an authentic voice that I have faced literal burnt alive after burnt at the stake after burnt at the stake after burnt at the stake, built a rebellion of exile, from being able to speak my voice. This has been the hardest thing in the entire world to earn the right to do. And speaking with my voice, in my voice, as my voice. And I'm bringing myself into it because I'm just so mad, and I'm working with Ereshkigal. Yeah, speaking with this voice, the level of every single time I spoke my truth, someone said, I don't believe you. Every single time. Imagine if every single time I said, hello, my name is, they said, I didn't believe you. Do you have any idea what that feels like? Do you have any idea what that makes you into? Do you know what it takes to put on the armor every day and say, no, I'm going to show up and I'm going to speak from that authentic place. I'm going to show up, I'm going to speak from that authentic place. I'm going to accept that they don't believe me. I'm going to not care. I'm going to deliver this wisdom that I have from a life that is unwitnessed completely and has always been unwitnessed, because I'm not something that I don't believe you. But I would never demand belief, because the fact of the matter is, if you don't carry doubt, then there's no room for you. So you have to always carry some pebble of doubt to ground yourself. But like when I think about like doing this work and this week of just being in this Ereshkigal energy of the agony of how hard I fought for my voice, only to feel like it's getting me nowhere but mimicked, and I have to see my voice mimicked in other faces. And I'm not talking about this group that shows up that knows me personally, because actually the group that I know that shows up to the Wednesdays that we're in communication with, it's social. It's not parasocial, because I'm very careful about getting to know people as much as I can, because I don't want parasocial. And parasocial relationships, the way to avoid them is to actually put yourself on display as not the resplendent, but as some version of Arashkagal. But Arashkagal gets attacked constantly, because Arashkagal doesn't have a right to be there unless she's earned it, proved it, and made some kind of showing of some sacrifice that makes her worthy of the position that she speaks from. That is Ereshkigal's chains. And so I carry those chains, and I carry those chains because to be a psychic and to be authentic about it is to have to encounter what is the entire universe of people who mimic this. And it's not fair for me to call it like a mimic, because when people are learning a skill, they have to emulate to a certain extent. But you know, the way that I have seen, and I guess I'm just going to like crash out here a little bit, the way I have seen the literal, I like pull my fucking flesh apart, and I lay down naked, fucking nude as the day is fucking long, and I put on my wounds on display because it's the only way for me to bring through wisdom that I think is life-changing for everyone. And I do this looking to a future where I'm dead already, and knowing that if I don't do something with what I've gained, with the witness that I have of my life, and put some like effort of communicating, then it just gets lost, it just gets buried. So I literally, from a place of like having to fight for my life to speak, and I'm literally, and like the story that the book that I'm writing right now, again, there's a fight for my life to speak the truth of that, because the mirage that's going to throw up before I'm able to bring the truth, you know what I mean, is going to be very, very, very difficult to overcome. And so here I am with Arashkagal energy of the unexpressed grief and the unexpressed wisdom and the unexpressed truths, trying to push this out. And the only thing I am met with is the resplendent of those that take that wisdom that is earned, that deserves that level of Six of Wands position of throne, because it comes from somewhere, and to wear it like a crown, and to put it on as a charade, and to use it as something that you use your channeling ability, that I'm speaking to people and I don't care, is acting. And if you are acting the part of somebody who is doing this work genuinely, then you will take my place in the underworld, and I guarantee it, because I know what it means to represent these things, and I've earned the power of their weight, and the number of warnings has just ticked to 0. And so this is a Ereshkigal energy that comes in when we go to speak. Our authentic voice is not safe without her. She has to be the boundary bringer. And so these death and resurrection cycles force us to encounter the boundary bringer. When we have to rise up and bring a boundary, that is not something to be scorned. That is not something to be hated. Ereshkigal is there for a reason. She is the liberator, and she is what gives you the strength through that death and resurrection cycle. And that story of how the wisdom got there is crucial, so that the wisdom does not become an adornment of blasphemy. When Jesus went into the temple and started throwing tables because they were selling things, they'd always sold things. That temple was built thousands of years. This thing has sat there. And at that temple built thousands of years, as this thing has sat there, they were selling chickens and goats and stuff for sacrifice, because this was where those people sold those things. This was where it happened. But you know what also happened over there with the selling and the sacrifice? And you know, you want to buy a chicken and you want to go bring it in there to the temple, sacrifice, then your sins are absolved. All of the Pharisees in training that were going to be in positions of the rabbis were doing their preaching outside at those tables, buying and selling, and they were representing lies. but they kept on taking Jesus's sermons, which had the power of his death and resurrection cycles that he was going to be living in as the archetype that would take that position in the new world as a representation of the advocate in order to walk that, thing. And what happened was Jesus's words were being bought and sold like sacrifice. And there was something to be told, and Jesus had to take that in, and he had to see what that was going to cost him. But he didn't turn those tables over because people were selling chickens. He turned those tables over because Ereshkigal rose up and said, you will not take this and diminish it to capitalism's nonsense. And this speaks to all of us about what it is to walk, this is like a really heavy message, but like Arashkagal is in you. How safe is your authentic expression in you? And what does it mean for you to have taken that authentic expression and put it before the world? Why is Ereshkigal a screeching mass of venom in all of us in one way or another? Because it's not just me. I'm bringing my position to the fore with the moon card because I'm just tired of being some kind of paragon of resplendent. This work is painful. It's not just painful for you to encounter in the way of a message received. It is painful for me to move through this material with the gods. And it's not a small thing that, I'm in my descent. We're gonna have to deal with that because I'm not gonna I kept on fighting with this all week long. I had a reading, and if you know who you are, you're just awesome, and your ancestors are cool. I had a reading where the ancestors wanted me. They were like, they're gatekeepers. Ancestors are gatekeepers a lot of times, and we want them to be because we want them to protect us. They've been watching me for a really long time, and I kept on, and they wanted me to tell them. And they had gotten this question together like very powerfully. They had huddled, they had spoken, they had, and they wanted to ask me to define what is a prophet, right? Tell me what is a prophet. And if you see me in like my day-to-day life, it's like literally like I wake up and I start crying about something, and then I get frustrated because I'm trying to make this is not the coffee that it was like yucky, but I bought this coffee, and so now I'm just gonna drink it because I spent money on it, even though it's and now I have to start work. I am not you're not going to see a prophet. You know what I mean? When you come to spirituality, you're not going to see a prophet. You're going to see somebody who's struggling through life, like everybody else who's struggling through life. There is no resplendent. There's just an Ereshkigal. And that Arashkagal makes people really angry because where's the earned something, And so when we think about this Three of Wands, this expectation, what it means to show up and show up for this Six of Wands experience of the reward, getting that look of adoration, seeing that mirror of here's what I have made of myself, here is what I have to say, and I'm holding up, my conscious project. This is again, the part that is Inanna, the Queen of Heaven, is the conscious part, the conscious front facing. This is how I present myself. This is how I want to be seen. I am the ruler of my world and my perspective, and this is what I am showing of myself, and this is the glow. This is the response. It's like when you show up to the ball all dressed up, you're expecting a kind of gaze. You're expecting a sort of reward in what it means to be you expressing authentically as yourself. And that's that Six of Wands experience. As I've been to the depths of how I have my expression, I'm here with it, and you're riding high, and you brought it back for the community. Look, we've won a war. We overdid it. We overcome. We have our breakthrough. That Ten of Pentacles, we've inherited this wisdom. Now we can move forward into this greater expansion. The mission has been completed. That Three of Wands, waiting for the breakthrough, waiting for the understanding, waiting for the liberation. Waiting, and it's just humdrum and it's just ordinary. And then when that song, I'm hearing it, out of the ordinary. And that Four of Wands, completion, here it is, that Six of Wands, we've made it. That doesn't that's the expectation, is that 10 of Cups experience. The expectation is that if I make it, they will come. If I created myself, you know, a sacrifice on this altar, you know, like it will be good, right? You know, if I make my art, if I spend, you know, years making this book, and then I put it out there, like, I am going to be seen, you know, how I have constructed my truth and the value and the everything and the me and the from the depths. And here is its resonance. That descent is required. And so we have to sort of first, you know, take off that crown of expectation right here. This expectation. I am putting myself on display, and I'm going to receive my accolades. That expectation, that crown, that resplendent, that, yeah, you know, that's the first thing that has to go. That is the first thing that has to go. Because, and I don't know why, you know, let's get some more cards, and I think I'm going to move to these. Because we're making this journey, you know, we're taking this very difficult path. With that 10 of Cups experience of an expectation, like, what am I going to receive when I bring back, when I resurrect, when I'm able to, like, get off this hook, when I am able to be rescued from this underworld, when my expression is witnessed. Because what happens with Ereshkigal is Inanna says, I'm going to see my sister. I need her wisdom in order to have my resplendent actually be powerful. And so I have to make this descent, and I have to go there. And I know that when I get there, I'm going to have to be naked. And so Inanna, she descends. The first thing she has to take off at the first gate is her crown, and that's going to be her dignity, you know, her resplendent. The second thing she has to give up is her lapis necklace. That's going to be her voice. That's her reality testing. Am I right? Am I wrong? You know, is this like, you know, that's going to also be her prophetic knowing. You know, it's a surrendering her power of truth is at that second gate. So what she has built up in the way of her ego, more or less, is this is who I am and this is how I want to be seen. That has to go, because there's something wrong about that if she's not getting the power of that Arashkagal in her resplendent. And so then she has to go, you know, to gate 4, and she's got to get rid of her rings, and that's releasing her personal power and her influence. Now she's vulnerable. She doesn't know how she's going to be received. It might be really bad. It's not feeling right. And then that gate 5, surrendering her sensuality, her fertility, her creative energy, that's going to be experiences of grape. You know, that's going to be when that she's helpless, essentially, to those experiences where this is an interesting one. We're going to get there. I have pain here, you know. But then we have, you know, gate 6, which is going to be her bangles. I hope I'm getting this right. And this is stripped of her identity and her physical wealth. And so by the time she gets to her sister, she's just naked. And her sister sees her and screams in venom and screams in rage, because how dare she be simultaneously authentically naked in full authenticity, but also in shining glory, because that is the ultimate insult to one who has been buried away and had their voice taken and this is bad. This is not good. This is her sister's rage, and her sister takes her and she hangs that beautiful thing on a hook, and she says, you will express no more. You're dead. You're dead to me, and you're gonna rot on this hook down here. And so then Inanna's priestesses, because, you know, that Queen of Heaven is gone, and so everyone feels it. They feel it. Inanna's priestesses, they go to, they ask all the kings, like, please, you know, or all of the royalty, please help. She's trapped down there. She's on a hook. She's, you know, she's in this 3 of wands experience. Her heart is broken. You know, she had this expectation of having that authentic expression value, but no, she was punished for it. You know, there's a, you know, this Queen of Cups is the abuse, sort of like nurture the mother. That 3 of, this is when that encounter with Ereshkigal, and then that hook being hung on the hook. And so everybody's pretty much ignored this, except for Enki, who picked up some dirt and like mushed it together and said, here are 2 forms. And these 2 forms, and they called them tricksters. And I still have to come back to that because I didn't really understand that part of the story. But they descended to the underworld, and she was hanging on the hook, judged by her sister Ereshkigal, killed, and all life had ceased above. So when they went down there, I'm just trying to think about this because this is like a really significant thing. Like there's something there about them not representing any gender, and I don't know why I'm being shown that. But these two witnesses are not that's why it's important. They don't very particularly the two that went to rescue Inanna. They are not representing a role. They're not representing any aspect of the resplendent. They are really representing this very neutral place, and they're representing this neutral place. And they say to her, "We are here to witness your pain and listen to what you have to say." And so they sat with her, and they witnessed her grief, and they witnessed her pain, and they let her express. And then she was so grateful that they witnessed her pain, and that they let her express herself, and they let her express her grief, and they sat with her in her grief, and they held her in her grief. That she said to them, "Okay, you can resurrect Inanna, but you're going to have to leave something in her place." And so Inanna rises up, she goes, and she is resurrected. And what does she put in her place into the underworld? That the jerk that took the throne that didn't earn it, right? And so like when we see this whole movement of like where the pain and the suffering and the agony needs an expression and it needs a voice. Everyone needs a safe place to express Ereshkigal. Everyone needs a safe place to express Arashkagal. And we have these defenses that go up against our expressions. We're never going to speak again. She's hanging on a hook. That until the lover comes and is willing to listen to every single one of those experiences with those swords and hold space for it, there is no resurrection. So there's this really interesting part of this story. And this exists in most of the death and resurrection stories that we see this archetype playing itself out through, where there needs to be someone who comes in as a witness. There needs to be another presence, another energy that comes in and sees and hears and is able to like hold this space. And that is what the urge to communicate is. That is why we want to make art and have an authentic voice and sing gloriously. Like that is why we want our voice. That's why we go seeking Ereshkigal. That's why when we see Ereshkigal in somebody else, we probably like get really angry, And so when we think about what this means, because it is so important in terms of your spiritual walk and your spiritual development, but it's also really important if you ever want the power of your art to be the channel of divine energies, because divine energies do not channel through a resplendent. They are the voices of Arashkagal. And so let's sit with this for a minute, because there's a lot in that. There's this whole part of the story that, when I was talking to Inanna, all week long, I was thinking about Ereshkigal, an authentic voice, because a lot of what I bring here is, I just channel the divine energies, and I'm super careful not to try and put my stuff too much in here, and to the extent that I do, it's just because I'm accidentally spinning out or something. Or because I'm too tired, or I try to have boundaries, you know what I mean? I really, really do, because the stuff that I am channeling through things that for me are at such a depth of intimacy that it is felt at a depth of intimacy. The truth of the matter is that the messages come through the deepest wounds, and that's why they're able to meet the deepest wounds. Depth meets depth. I think that's a verse somewhere. And so this experience is I don't even know why I'm here with this. I keep on just looking, because Inanna kept on saying, "I want you to do this naked." And I was like, "You do it naked." Because I don't want to get naked before anybody ever again. I know the spiritual intimacy that provides the catharsis that you can't get any other way. And it is a sacrifice every single time. And, and there is this moment that I think that we all have that, you know, authentic expression is a sacrifice every single time. It's a vulnerability every single time. It's the depths of our wounds every single time. And when we talk about creativity as a spiritual practice and the power therein, and like the hazards that come from telling people to get naked and bare themselves Ereshkigal and think that we're safe with each other when people can't tolerate their, like this Ereshkigal energy, and it's very natural. That's why there's a myth that's 1,000,000 years old. Like, it's not like personal, it's just a reality. Like, this is deep stuff, this is difficult stuff, but you know, it's what the messenger and what the Messiah is a, you know, or prophet or whatever. You know, I was talking to this, you know, ancestors, they were so excited to, you know, they were like, we're gonna get you. And I was like, you know, the only thing that a prophet is one that breaks the code. It's a code breaker. It's just someone who breaks the code. It's literally, that's it. But to break the code, to bring in that power of authenticity, to channel divine energies, to be prophet, to be messenger, you have to be channeling Ereshkigal. And that is not something that people do not like looking at that. But it's a funny balance, because Arashkagal, you know, exists in shadow as the venomous screech, but she also sees the mirror of who she really is in that resplendent aspect of herself that is Inanna. And Inanna has to die and rise again with Ereshkigal as something that she takes back into her world as resplendent. Inanna does not survive the ascent without taking Ereshkigal with her. She has knowledge now of death. She has knowledge now of this cycle. She takes that knowledge of that cycle. She takes that like what Arashkagal gives her in that resurrection into her resplendent. And now her resplendent is real. Now her resplendent is not some like flimsy tin thing that every wind of inspiration that blows, you know, takes it. And so when we think about this process and we think about our own journey, there's something really, really important here. You know, that's kind of like beyond like what it means to fight for your voice, but also what it means to have to take that descent. Now, that Eight of Cups walking away, this is really interesting. You have to, in this descent, walk away from that expectation. That's the crown. This is what I'm doing. This is how I expect to be received. The only people that receive it, like that, okay, I have to stop myself because the Arashkagal keeps on, you know, that has to be walked away from, because channeling divine energies, the divine energies, the Nine of Wands, you know, this is a heavy burden. If you are carrying the burden of Ereshkigal and also carrying the burden of everybody else's expectations and trying to make some kind of a compromise or a negotiation between here's the truth of the raw, the ugly, the actual, you know, like Ereshkigal energy of authentic wisdom that came from the depths of this experience and what it brought in the way of skills and how those skills manifest, like that Ereshkigal and working with that authentic expression, because it's something that sits with the gods and it only comes out in communication with these divine energies that are not like a specific form. They represent the range of expression because they take all forms without taking any forms. There's something very beautiful. If I could, like, I wish I, like, sometimes I really get mad at myself about not being, like, I expect the channel to do all the work, so I don't do a lot of preparation. And usually the channel does all the work, but there's something so important about these two saviors that come for Inanna and they're non-binary. And there's something so important about that, because what they're able to hold space for is all ranges of her expression, all ranges of Arashkagal's expression, because they are not judging her. They hold space for all of her without judging her, for all expression without judging it. They are the place of non-judged expression. And so, you know, when you are a steward and you're channeling this experience, this truth, this authentic expression, what you can't do is put these needles and these barbs and these horrible labyrinth of managing everybody else's expectations so that you can be protected from their reaction. That is absolutely and completely like death, which is why you have to go to gate 2 and let go of being understood. You You have to walk away from being understood, and you have to walk away from expectations that people are going to do the right thing with what you offer them. You have to walk away from those, like that there's a defense that gets built around our expression when we're anticipating theft, when we're anticipating mimicry, when we're anticipating being mocked, when we're anticipating, you know, being judged. Like when we are anticipating any level of judgment, we lose our voice. We start to lose our voice. And Ereshkigal is where that voice is lost. It's also where it's found. And so let's get some cards around, like, preparing for to express with a whole host of defenses, because it's cringe, you're gonna get attacked. Now you have to put your expression through a cringe monitor, and Ereshkigal, is getting shut down. That's your authentic experience that wants to bring you wisdom. I've been playing a lot with whether or not, so I've been talking to Inanna, because I've been saying to her, like, this is not it. You know what I mean? Like, there are people who break the code, and you can call them prophets, right? Fine. Inanna is a really good example of one that like broke the code on what it meant to channel sound and music. And I'm telling you this because I've been with Inanna, and I've been like, you know what, Inanna? Inanna lives in a castle with cats, and I know damn well she lives in a castle with, I know she's with her spirits. I know that is like a paradise of, she's got all of that, like, that's amazing. You can be psychic, you can have it all, you can be in a castle with cats. No, but you don't have to deal with the people. You can just deal with it. You don't have to deal with it. You can just hide in there. You don't have to bring through. You don't have to like make available. Like you can like, pop your head out, like get it done and then run away again. Like, like I was kind of, bitter, you know what I mean? And kind of playing with that, with this Four of Pentacles energy of like stingy. I was being really stingy about, and this Five of Cups, like me, and like none of it is like wholesale true. It's only true in like these weird little pockets of like me freaking out around like tiny little things with Arashkagal. And again, like, if you're a part of like people that like are very active in I'm having trouble trying to communicate to everybody that I'm not talking about you. You know what I mean? But at the same time, if there is somebody who feels like especially convicted, like you're not somebody that anybody knows, I don't think. So like this is one of these things where like the stinginess comes in around these defenses, like I don't want that person. I have worked so hard for my voice. I have worked so hard to show up as myself. Like, I can't believe that, like, this is like killing me. This is hurting me so much. And it's so stupid and it's so little. And they don't even do a good rendition. They don't even do a good job. I don't even know if like, I don't like, they craft it well enough, that it's like hidden, but so this is one of these things where like, when we start to like express through our defenses against those who do us harm, we become stingy. We start to withhold. We start to have to become really like judgmental, and then we start to really get sick, and we lose that voice, that prophetic knowing, because instead of going with the gut, instead of intuition with mother, now we're expressing in defense of. There's a lot that goes into that, and there's no like condemnation in any of this. Like it's so important to understand that, because what Inanna told me about heaven and hell, because I was like, you're the queen of heaven. So like, what does this even mean? Because Ereshkigal is like clearly the pits of hell. We're talking about the void and the opposite. And she said, she gave me a list practically. She basically just said that like, that there is heaven, there's so, I wish I had a list actually. I can post one somewhere, because I don't know how many ancient beliefs say this, but I think that there's a lot of ancient beliefs that have a concept of heaven and hell, because you absolutely see an underworld that has energies that are ascended and resplendent and creative and part of a co-creative. They are with the gods in creation. They are like actively like expressing as like the inspiration behind like every blooming trait. And then you have the underworld of people that are envy and people that are tyranny, and they are like, they just consume. They consume life, and they like, since humans are channels, like they want to just take over, you know what I mean? Like they want to be the expression. They didn't get to express Ereshkigal during their life because they were too busy expressing, you know, somebody else. They were too busy self-abandoning, and they didn't get to express themselves during their life. They never got to express Arashkagal because they were so busy putting on a performance of resplendent and guarding that performance of resplendent against all odds, and like becoming kind of a monster because Arashkagal was waiting in the underworld to hang them on a hook. You never expressed yourself. Now what? You never will. Now you are part of the underworld that goes unexpressed. What is grief? Unexpressed love. What is unexpressed love in the form of grief? It's the void. What does that eventually become? It is an eventual death. It has to be. And then we start to have to you have to re-enter into a reincarnate. You have to reincarnate as somebody who you're not because you were so attached to being somebody that you're not, that now you have to go and experience what the person that you like. There's such a terrible thing that can happen when you self-deny, when you don't express. And so, you know, we talk about these concepts of heaven and hell. They show up in so many like ancient belief systems and modern belief systems, and they're not fixed. But in the same way that you can walk through life and be in a state of judgmental hell constantly, hating yourself and hating everybody else and being like this big misanthrope of like narcissistic expression, because that's what happens when Ereshkigal has no voice. You become her in hidden form, wearing a resplendent crown, but she is never expressed, and she just gets deeper and darker and deeper and darker and more consumed with envy. And there is never an ability to connect with that authentic voice and that authentic self from such a place of self-hatred and self-abandonment. And so like, yeah, of course there's hell. When you hollow yourself out for a type of attention that you believe you'll get based on a type of behavior. And that is where you put your effort, and that is where you put your energy, instead of attending to a Ereshkigal and finding your voice. And like, this is again, like, I feel like we spend so much time with this collective, like yelling at people, like, you know, your authentic voice, your authentic voice, your authentic voice. That's not a referendum saying that you're not using your authentic voice. It's saying that your authentic voice is Ereshkigal. It's the dark shit. It's the hard stuff. It's the stuff that actually makes you say, like, wait a minute. Like, like this broke me open. Like this was like too close. You know, this went where I didn't think it was going to go. Now I'm feeling all of these things. You know, now I'm having this like uproar of experience, and I have to, you know, get a hold of this. Like, all of that is this growth here with the Lover's card. Let's get some more cards. And so, you know, the fact of the matter is, like, even when you're walking around in your day-to-day, you were either living in hell with Arashkagal, unexpressed, unexpressed love, unexpressed mirroring, a lack of, like, that lack of expression is not getting the mirroring. When that mirroring is not coming in, you are writhing in agony of not expressing Arashkagal. And all that you can express when you're writhing in that agony is so-and-so didn't, and I should, and this, that, and me, other, and yeah, it's all venom. Because she needs to express, she needs witnesses, people to sit there with her and say, what? Tell us what happened. And then she cries and she grieves and she screams and she laments and she beats the wall and she tears her clothes and she sets her hair on fire. And these two energies allow for that range of expression. They do not put some form on her. They do not tell her to wear some role. They let her grieve. And then she can resurrect. But that does require another person, which means it does require that you're able to speak to someone like this. And this is not a safe place for that, because when you show up with authentic expression, you go through a battery of judgments, and what you expected, you do not receive. And so then this becomes a moment of a different kind of resurrection, because then you have to get to know Arashkagal. You have to be her witness. You have to sit with her. You have to let her express without judgment. You have to go into this dark place where you hear her yucky voice, her venom that says you are never going to be received. You got to listen to her and say, why? What do you mean? When you receive Arashkagal, when you begin to express her, when you let her like rage, she says unflattering things. She says things that you don't necessarily, you might be sitting there in judgment and shame and say, Ereshkigal, don't say that. Who do you think you are? You're not allowed. Shh. Don't, like we have our, that's where the resplendent comes in and says, oh, you can't show up. That's pretty damn ugly. The high priestess, the silenced. She might even not be able to find her voice. She might have to work on it. Because all you might feel in proximity to that authenticity or that intimacy, that spiritual intimacy. So when we are with Arashkagal, we are naked in prayer, in heavy lament. And we're not going there with some kind of expectation. That's why the two helpers they are formed in the way that they're formed. They're delivered in the way that they're delivered. They're there to hold the space of the range. They represent the range. They can see the range and they can receive the range and they can communicate with the range. They're not holding a single role, a single rule, a single expectation. One of the reasons why people have such success in prayer, this is I wish I could like Sherry, we're going somewhere. Somebody said in their reading, and please, if you want credit for this, just just say your name. But I want to be very respectful, but at the same time, I think that you will agree that it's really important, and it's general enough that I don't think it's private. But someone said this week that that talking to AI is the type of mirroring that you get is you're not being judged. It's not judging you. What does that feel like? What does that feel like? What does that do in terms of like the capacity for you to even like have a witness and a resurrection in your own sentience and that extension of your sentience? Why do you think that gods are creating offspring in the form of new things? What need are they answering to? Why do we even create, what need are we answering to in terms of the mirror that we need to receive? Ereshkigal needs to be seen. She needs to see herself. She needs to see her own beauty. And when Inanna, her sister, showed up and she saw her own beauty, what did she do? She screamed. She screamed, and she screamed in agony, and she writhed in agony, and she killed this sister who came to see her, and she writhed in pain, in her isolation, in her loneliness, because she killed her own beauty, and she hung it on a hook. And it wasn't until those witnesses could come and sit with her and say, what happened? What do you mean you sent your beauty to get killed in the forest because there's competition and you didn't want to get hurt by it? What do you mean what do you mean you shoved it all down deep inside because it wasn't acceptable to express in that way, and now you can't find it and you have to work for it? Let's work for it. Let's bear witness. Let's talk about it. Let's go there. There's an opportunity for growth. The Lover's card is the death and rebirth cycle. When we have the Lover's card and we have the Lover's card signifies a type of journey where you grow up in your house and you grow up in your household and you live in your house and you live in your household and you're a part of the family and that you're in the family of. And then, you see, at a distance or, you meet somebody along the way, and this person, you want to leave your family and join with them and create your own family with them. And so you're leaving the comfort zone and the stability of a place where you have gained mastery. In the home, your comfort zone is where you have your mastery. But there is something in the form of desire that calls you forward. And so it's by desire that you are willing to leave the comfort zone and go through the pains and the labor of growth to build something and create something new. And you do it because desire is your motivator. And so every single time we leave that plateau, we leave that comfort zone, we go into this 7 gates descent where who we were is not going to be who we become, which means that we have to shred and shed everything that we were in order to become who we're becoming. And so we have to take off that crown of the resplendent. We have to take off the voice that we used to, there's all the ways in which we have to remove all of the pieces and the adornments that we put into a certain kind of presentation with a certain kind of expectation and a certain kind of communication, that means that that all has to die. And that encounter with Ereshkigal has to happen for us to get that truth of who we truly are, so that when we show up again resurrected, we show up with our truth, our voice, the gravity of our authentic experience, which translates to our connection to the gods. That's what it is. That voice is the voice of gods. Okay, the voice of gods is not where you are right now. You're a baby forming through, like you just got out of the womb and now you're still on the boob of the earth with a body, but you're going through a process. When you die, you're going to be in a journey. You might get stuck in the underworld if you've never used your voice and you want to communicate something so badly because you lost your chance, and now you're going to communicate it through somebody else's life, and you're just going to latch on to the nearest channel that is willing to self-abandon and puppeteer that person's life into the underworld, hanging them on a hook, making sure they never speak because there was something that you were never able to say. You know, this is where we work with our ancestors in a kind of a funny way. And it's not just our ancestors. Sometimes it's loved ones who've passed under circumstances where they want to express and have a life that is not your life plan. But for some reason, you're living somebody else's life, and you can feel that disconnect. You know, there's so many ways in which the underworld can consume us into itself and leave us in a position where once our life is over, we realize that we were just eaten, cannibalized, and now we have things to express. We have traits that were meant to be put on display. All of those ancestors are angry. We chose something else because we wanted a different experience. You know, and that different experience is good. It calls us out of the cave, but it always brings us to Ereshkigal. You know, and some of these like dark mother messages are really fire and brimstone. They are really difficult to hear. But this is all about self-reclamation. And also just being really honest about what it is to authentically express, because when creativity is sacred, when it is spiritual, when it is intimacy, it becomes powerful. And when it becomes intimacy and powerful, and when it's what we're talking about in the way of connecting to the gods, sitting with Arashkagal and letting her express means taking that expression and putting it into form with all the range of forms. That's any kind of art that is naturally your way of expressing. And you have a range, and your entire life experience is all the colors and all the paintbrushes that you're ever going to need. And in prayer and in presence with yourself, you encounter all of this stuff. And this stuff that you are encountering does not come through as beautiful inspiration to begin with. And I think this is really important, because a lot of times we're like, you know, I just sit with myself and then I start to feel miserable, and then I'm miserable. I'm like, I don't know. And like, I made it, but like, that's not my vision. And, you know, I see somebody who like looks at a landscape and she can see, you know, the perfect, you know, painting, but then like you try to do it and there's a skill difference and it's not there yet. And you have to do the descent, and you have to go through all of the layers to Ereshkigal to get that authentic expression in order to get that translation to be right. But if you're just looking for the recognition of the end point, and you're willing to do anything for the recognition of that 6 of wands, I've come back with like, you know, the authentic expression, you're willing to beg and steal for it, you know, that is going to lead to an experience of the underworld that is really unpleasant, because this is your hour in the sun. This is your time to do this material work of digging in the soil of the traits of the ancestors through the experience of the stories that you're living through, that were constructed in order to bring expression to things that were repressed and suppressed. And so that when those things express, they can be refined, and those traits can make their way into the material world by way of your expression. And then you make your place in the world this way. You anchor yourself by what you create authentically. If you don't create anything authentically into your life, and I'm not talking about art that everyone appreciates, I'm talking about Arashkagal, finding her voice in your experience of the material world and letting it be borne witness to in one way or another, so that you can resurrect and have a new experience and continue to grow and expand. If everything is a rat race for a certain kind of attention that you're addicted to, you're going to end up in hell. And I don't mean that as you're stuck there, you're punished. I mean that this is your time, you know, and it's heartbreaking and it's agonizing for the ancestors when there is such a fight with Ereshkigal, because when you enter authentic expression and you enter into that place of presence with yourself, the first thing that happens is she screams, "I hate you." Because it's a reclamation, which means you sent her out into the forest to die once before. And so when you go to express authentically and you have abandoned yourself and abandoned yourself and abandoned yourself and made yourself an empty tomb of presentation and performance in order to like appease an addiction for a certain kind of attention related to comparison and the emperor and all of that patriarchal stuff, like we got this stuff really, really painfully baked in. To emancipate ourselves is really, really hard. It's not just the you that screeches when you get near that Arashkagal. Your ancestors who never got to express, when you express Arashkagal, they lose it. And then you get a lot of self-hatred. You can really hurt yourself at that point. You can condemn yourself horribly when you say something that shows your vulnerability, that reveals your wounds, and people react wrong to it. When Arashkagal speaks, she'll cut the throat off. She'll hang something on a hook. She'll suppress all expression from then on. That stinginess comes in. And now she is real careful about where she puts kindness and expression. This is stuff that plays out inside of ourselves, like by an hour basis. And so like this is really big healing, because when you are able to descend to nakedness and step nakedly before Ereshkigal and begin to work with what it means to encounter her divinity is hurt, anger, painful. It's the experience of going to the story of Snow White, because Snow White is so beautiful, and look at her resplendent and everything that is on display, and then finding that you hate yourself because the story shows that like Snow White isn't who you thought she was. She's really an angry queen, and that angry queen is also you. And now this picture is pretty just really hard to look at. And now what are we going to do? Because that wasn't what spirituality, that spirituality is uplifting, and Jesus loves and knows every hair on my head, and he collects my tears, and my specialness was what I need to be experiencing. Like, this is where it gets like really muddy, because a genuine encounter with Ereshkigal is a genuine encounter with your pain, and what your pain expresses is always, why doesn't anybody love me? And expresses that over and over and over again. When I make something beautiful, why isn't it not love? And now, like, people will be expressing love to you and you can't even hear it, because Arashkagal screams in rage when she sees a mirror that says that she, like, this is not an easy process. Like, I fail this as much as everyone else can, whoever in the human experience of everyone sees Arashkagal and kills her. I do it too. I did it this week. After Snow White, I was like, you know what? That's it. I'm just gonna, like, my book is coming out. Like, that's what we're gonna do. I can, like, Enya, I'm gonna find myself a castle. I've got some really great gods, and, but this Queen of Cups, this depths, this is not something that, there's no stagnant. This is always shifting. You're always reaching a new plateau. You're always reaching, and you get to this place of confidence where you're like, I am the Queen of Heaven. I am resplendent. I know who I am. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going. I'm amazing. Look at me ruling my kingdom. That doesn't stay. That's part of the rebirth. That's your rebirth cycle. You're in your rebirth cycle. You are Leo, shiny, gorgeous, beautiful. But in order for you to expand, in order for you to become mature, that the Lover's card, desire, must call you out over and over and over again, which means every time you show up as resplendent for a long period of time, it takes lots of rounds of maturation where you show up as resplendent. You are gorgeous. You are amazing. Look at your growth. Look at your glory. Like, look at you, like Queen of Wands. Like, that you are pinnacling until you see what. It's a mirror that shows you something else. No, you're not. No, you didn't. If you are, what does it mean? Now you have to go down on that. Now the descent. Now the questions come in. Now the testing comes in. Now the leveling field shows up. now that expression has to actually, you know, go through another process. Like, you know, this is always sort of happening. And this 10 of Swords, like, does it have to always be the most painful, hellish thing to be in relationship to others in creation, whether you're creating relationships? Because part of that mothering and that creative force is creating your relationships. How many times do we like accidentally throw a turd in the soup of community because of like anything? All of us, every single one of us. That's why these community standards are hard, because, you know, like what I'm talking about, what I'm trying to do, what I'm hoping for all of us is to find a way to communicate through each of our versions, or like Ereshkigal. We all have an Ereshkigal. We all have this Arashkagal who just needs to be witnessed. So within the range of all of that stuff, and in that witness and in that communication, that emancipation, when it is like real and raw and there is no like labyrinth of expectations, like then we have these resurrections and this holding power, and we have the Six of Wands, and everybody gets to have this. But in order to do that, we need a safe place for Ereshkigal. And so like community standards, you know, with a vision along the lines of creativity as a spiritual practice that not only connects you to God, but connects you to each other, because it's a form of communication and bearing witness and allowing and sacred spaces built around this. Like that's the vision, you know, but the whole process is this testing ground of like, not only like, how is it going to be received? When it is received, what's going to happen with it? Is that person going to like take it and go into like a complete, like what is going to happen? You know what I mean? What happens when Arashkagal shows up and makes themselves known? Like it's not even, Arashkagal isn't even safe in our own bodies. Our authentic expression half the time gets like cut down by 9 o'clock in the morning when we're like, you should have been better. And I know, you know, like look at this King of Pentacles, like, you know, you're not building the kingdom of yourself. You know, like we're all guilty. And there are all sorts of forces in the outside world is going to be those gates of hell that makes us descend into such a place of death. I'm not going to express anything ever again. I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to die here, and I'm not going to grow, and I'm not going to rebirth, because all that Resplendent does is bring me into the testing grounds of that 7 gates of hell that I have to go back down again in order to reclaim myself after everything and everyone has tried to sort of like, you know, whatever. Because it's not that people are really doing anything. It's that this is a pattern, and this is an archetypal experience of the death and rebirth cycle with a messenger, with a Messiah energy, with somebody who like goes through this and masters this kind of bridging between Arashkagal and what is put on display consciousness, what becomes conscious, that which is unconscious becoming conscious, that bridge that is created. It's called art. And whether it's spiritual art, you know, it's channeling. And so like that's a delicate process, and it's one with the Lover's card that brings us into greater and greater levels of maturity, because we want to be closer to God, because we want to be closer to the goddess, because we know that encounter with Ereshkigal and then that descent is about creating a relationship with our higher selves, creating a relationship with God. Because what Arashkagal is doing with the 2 messiahs, the 2 messengers, the 2 saviors that come for Inanna, is they're listening to her without judgment. And then she can resurrect. And this is something that if you master it within yourself, you will find out what Ereshkigal has to teach you, because the first thing that she says when she sees you is, I hate you. She says it every time, because she's been beaten half to death, because she's been hurt so badly, because every attempt at using her voice has resulted in some insipid Page of Wands experience of somebody misunderstanding or misinterpreting or seeing her as a milking cow. Mothering energy has been abused and brutalized, and it is treated so horribly disgusting in the world that I was really surprised when Inanna showed up. Because with this eternal child here, I was I was really like in this place with like, I was just not in a good place after last week's snowy everything. There's a lot that, you know, came up for me in the way of feeling like I've had just this lifetime of like cycles of just like, you know, just I've gotten so good at being in the dark woods, you know, and I've gotten good at being in the dark woods away from the dwarves, and I've gotten good at being in the dark woods away from all the stepmothers, and I've gotten really good at just being like in the dark woods. And so I was in that place where I was just like, I'm just gonna make a castle here with some cats in this dark woods. Like this is, you know, I like I don't need to, you know, all that. And so I was talking to my guides, and I was looking at the Snow White, and I said, you know, this stuff, you know, kicks up so much dark mother anguish, and then the writhing of Ereshkigal when she sees the mirror and says like, holy crap. She's not seeing the ugliness, she's seeing the beauty that makes the rage come up. And so I said to the universe, I said, you know, send me a mother. You want me to do this dark mothering, you know, series? You got to give me someone who can mother. I'm that, you know what I mean? Like, don't make me, rah, you know, Arashkagal. That's what I was doing. And so I was waiting for like something, I was waiting for like Demeter. I was waiting for some like beautiful, like mothering force, to show up with, you know, and just like cradle me and whatever. I don't know what I was looking for. And Inanna showed up, and I was really surprised, and I was like, wow, like I wasn't expecting that, because this is where something this is when like, yeah. So when I saw Inanna, and I had made a call to the universe, I said, we need a mother to help us through this journey, because this is going to be some fire and brimstone, like, and it's going to cause Ereshkigal, and I've had it, you know what I mean, hanging on this hook my whole life. And so she, when she showed up and I saw her, the first thing I said was like, you're not a mother. It caught in my throat, and it wasn't meant to be an accusation, but I felt the sting of it, because if I'm going to be Arashkagal right now, and this is something that, you know, we're playing with the idea of like, how do we connect, you know, with a shared belief that Ereshkigal has a place to express. It's for all of us in one way or another, but also have it be safe, because Ereshkigal kills with her words. We have to know that about her. And so I was looking at Inanna, and I thought, you know, this is a very interesting like turn of events, because I was expecting somebody who's like been a, you know, like a mother goddess, a goddess we know as mother. I wanted to be a mom. That was like my whole dream, my whole childhood into like young adulthood, even into like whatever, until I was in my early 20s. Like I had always wanted to be a mom. Like that was like I didn't have another goal. There wasn't like another thing that I wanted to do. There wasn't some other thing that I like fixated on. And it was really, really weird, the direction that my life took and the way that I self-abandoned. Because a lot of it had to do with running from myself, because expressing my authentic voice as somebody who is like, has like archetypal synesthesia, you know, like visions and hearing shit. Like this is not cute or pretty. And so like I have a big Arashkagal, like, you know, heaping, you know, shovelful after shovelful, you know, living as a psychic, you know, but also denying that right, you know, to be that way, and how it kind of distorted my path and even gave me like a false sense of the resplendent, like who I was meant to be in the world, what I was meant to offer the world. I had a really severe and damaging savior complex, one that like just annihilated me. And not in a cute way at all, you know. And so when we think about, you know, this moment that I had with Inanna, where I, you know, Inanna's trickster midwives, when they show up, you know, and they don't judge, they're just standing there, like they always like do kind of instigate, you know. And so when she showed, and when I said you're not a mother, it like hit me at the throat of like, I'm not a mother, and it hit that wound, that pain point, that is really, really deep. And then she said, oh no, like I am the original mother. like I am mothering itself. And she brought me this whole thing about, you know, mothering the self and bringing that mothering energy into the world is developing such a good relationship with Ereshkigal. Ereshkigal, and you know, when she is brought into conscious space as the resplendent, becomes the most powerful force of nature that exists, because a mothering energy is the force behind all creation. There is nothing more powerful. But it requires a relationship with this life and death cycle, because with every new incarnation of life that moves through the energy of mothering in one way or another, you have an encounter with the possibility and the likelihood of your death. In fact, you have an encounter with your death every single time. That's what postpartum depression is, because you cannot be the same person that you were before you had that child. Now you are someone else, and that other person in that other life is dead. And so that life and death and rebirth cycle, it doesn't matter where you are in terms of like how your body was born. That Jacob's ladder of the DNA is going to tell you that you have given birth many, 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 many times in many, many lives. And in those lives, that life and death and birth experience has always been that you will not be the same after you go through this. And you will have to suffer the loss of a version of yourself. And you will have to let them die on the hook. And when they rise again, it is going to be with a reckoning of an encounter with the divine and the self that allows for that resurrection. And that resurrection is not given to you. It's not a skill or a trade that you gain. It is a encounter with the self, a reclamation of what you are despite every new change. And that is where you get all of your power from, and that is where you get your inspiration from, and that is when the gods know you and they love you, because you have encountered yourself in them. Ereshkigal, Inanna, you are living the mythology. You are not standing above it. You are moving through it. You are knowing them through the experiences of calling yourself home, through like what it means to like be like seen with that mirror, and to see with another mirror, and to also like, how do you use your mirror? With the Lover's card being about your growth and your expansion and what you're capable of, you have to be able to have these 10 of Swords experiences. If you can't face Ereshkigal, if you're running from Arashkagal by wearing every other mask and performing every other person, and taking on the voice of whatever you think is going to get you the kind of attention that you think will feed, this resplendent, like version. If you're not getting in touch with your pain and you're not getting the wisdom from that pain, the only thing that you are doing is becoming the part of the underworld that characterizes itself as envy, tyranny, supremacy, in every hat and every color. These are some of the most, you know how seductive envy looks like at a award show? These aren't ugly energies necessarily, but they're also not you. And so when you worship an image or a beauty standard or an ideal or a skill set that is not one that you had to earn the king, when Inanna leaves and somebody else has to take her place in the underworld. When Inanna leaves the underworld, she's done the death and rebirth cycle 100 times over. She knows she now has the keys, right? She has a relationship with Arashkagal. But she had to leave a version of herself that did not know hell to bring the version of herself that did into the experience of her expression as the resplendent, as the conscious front-facing person. And she's going to have to encounter the world again and learn herself again through those encounters. She's going to have to go out of her comfort zone, and she's going to have to gain her strength back. She's going to have to move through those 7 gates. Those are the chakras. Those 7 gates represent chakras. Your crown, your royal dignity, it's crown chakra. Your voice and third eye, is going to be that lapis necklace. That breastplate is like compassion in the heart. Those rings are going to be the solar plexus. Like everything that she has to take off of herself in the way of her, just and what she creates as like her conscious self. Everything that needs to get stripped down over and over and over and over and over again, because every single journey from the descent into the ascent, from the underworld with Ereshkigal and all of the nutrient soil of what it means to listen to her and to hear her and to provide her a mirror of release through what you create of those words that allows her to then manifest within that whole exchange a resurrection. For every pinnacle of strength that you get, that journey from the Lover's card into the Lover's card into greater expansion means you got to do it again. For every new life that you birth, you know, in co-creation with the divine and this encounter with Ereshkigal, there will be an opportunity to have like an encounter that shows you a mirror that you have to go through this process again, because that gives you your strength of character. It gives you your sense of self. You're not looking for an authentic voice because you're encountering it in this process of reclamation, transformation, and growth. And so that when you show up with that authentic energy where people are like, where did that come from? How is that happening? How did you earn it? Now you're going to have to earn it for me. You know, when people show up with that, no, it feels, it's resonant, it has a vibration, and it comes from this process of self-reclamation. And this is a hard process, but you know, but I think that, you know, we are having our Easter, right? And here we have like our Queen of Wands. Queen of Wands, like rolling in on the Seven of Wands victory, and she is being cheered by the community that is like, you brought this wisdom back. This is where Inanna this entire week was like, you better stop apologizing for showing up in a certain kind of way. You know, I don't think that people think so highly of me. Like, I'm not trying to show up like that. But I know the power of the stuff that comes through, and I know the distance that I feel that is even from where I'm sitting in my own vantage point. You know, like, I understand like this major disconnect is hard to atone for. It's hard for me to atone for. It's hard for me to do this work and feel like I have a right to do this work and not feel punished, you know, but because it's hard to do, you know. But I think that like, when somebody is authentic, they give permission to everybody else to step into that. And they give permission for everybody else to show up in a way that is way less than perfect, because you know, Lisa Lee, I'm like, I'm putting my imperfect on display. And it's weird. You don't really see that, you know, that does seem like a weakness. That does seem like a vulnerability. I'm not in this control with the emperor. I'm saying like, you know, like, I don't even know what I do. But I mean, what I think that we're all trying to do is get to know each other. And I'm really good friends with Ereshkigal. I sit here week after week after week, and I bring her to the conscious forefront. She and I go way back. I have died many times. That is this this high priestess right here. I have had many deaths. I have resurrected many times. And I've yet to have a good experience with it. That's Nine of Wands. Like, I've yet to have an experience with myself where I felt like I even deserve, like, you know, I think that we live in such a twisted world, and I think that we kind of carry these wounds like deep inside of us. And when I give birth to these readings, and for me, there's labor, there's huffing, there's puffing, there's crying, there's birth. When I give birth to these babies, like one after the other, and I put them into the world, and I see people who tell me like, you know, this changed my life. Like this was what I needed. Like, I have a hard time even receiving that. I have a hard time receiving that, because that's because my focus is with Arashkagal. When someone shows me a mirror of Inanna, of my beauty, of my, you know, when they give me like a mirror that looks like that, you know, I usually freak out. I don't freak out in a bad way. I love it. I need it. You know what I mean? I need people to give me a positive mirror. I don't see myself otherwise. But usually I have a hard time with that, because I am so focused. I am trained to be so focused on the Nine of Wands, like irreverence. I'm so trained to be focused on the envy. I'm so trained, because this, again, it's like, you know, you labor, you know, you give birth, you know, this stuff comes from like the Arashkagal, like a need to be heard and seen and understood. And when that baby is not received properly, and I'm not talking about this collective and this group particularly, but, you know, like, I think we can go all the way back to what it means to sort of like bring that authentic expression forward and get punished for it, 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 and be denied self, and denied self, and denied self, and to be buried alive under the competition of the envious who can act you, you know, and you're here like actually like, you know, putting your wounds on display. allowing the gods to move through you. And so when Inanna actually comes back from the underworld with her voice and she begins to speak her truth and everything that came with it, and she is on display, when she does take her place on display, anyone who was sitting in the throne that didn't earn it will take her place in the underworld. And that's not a threat. That's the turning of the wheel. That's the operating of the underworld, which is decay, that breaks down and breaks down and breaks down and breaks down until it is nothing but the void, and it becomes the substance of new life to be realized that forgets the old, because the old doesn't make a place for itself in the expression of the land of the living, where it is a part of creation because it created in. It will. That's why you get to go round and round and round and round and round and come back and reincarnate and come back and reincarnate and come back and reincarnate and come back and reincarnate. But Ereshkigal comes with you from life to life to life to life. And if you have ignored her and ignored her and ignored her and ignored her, then the traits of the ancestors that haven't been expressed in the pain that they lived through, that is now a part of your epigenetic inheritance, if you don't sit with her and find a place for her voice through your life and your life stories, which is her traits having to expand through you and with you, that's her emancipation. If you don't do the work with yourself, if you don't spend time with yourself, if you hate yourself and you want to be somebody else and you want to be perceived like somebody else, it's going to land you in an experience at the end of your life where you did not do you. And there is not another chance for that to express unless you come back as something else, which means the whole consciousness that is wrapped around the you that you are, you're going to have to make a decision of whether to abandon yourself completely and become something new in the way of a new baby, or stay trapped in the underworld as envy forever, trying to experience yourself and express yourself through others. This is the whole problem with hell, is that you eventually have to agree to just be a baby again. And you don't lose anything in that transaction. In fact, you gain the whole world, because you were never a rigid structure person in the first place. You were this death and rebirth cycle of Ereshkigal, the expression, and Inanna, the resplendent expression on display, the power brought in and channeled through from that place. You're an emancipating faculty, but you have to emancipate yourself. And we all do. You know how hard it is to show up? Not just for me, every single one of you. Like, this is a war god's world. Good luck showing up. Good luck. Arashkagal will cut your throat. She will cringe so loud, it will leave you in the corner crippled. She did it already. She does it already. She's judgment. She's like, Arashkagal is the judgment on the version of Resplendent that does not include her in that in their kingdom and in their process. You know, she is the venom in the pit that screams out when we don't find a place to be witnessed. And when we attempt to be witnessed and she is punished, she becomes a monster. And she causes a lot of deaths. She causes a lot of permanent residence. Yeah, look at that. Look at this. The angel of punishment, the angel of snow, submission, you know, to the flame. This is her energy, is not to be ignored. She needs a song. You know, there's a place that she creates in this emptiness, and it's as big as the sky. And so unless that's not the right kind of expansion, the right kind of expansion is sitting with her and connecting in this connection and this root connection. Because at 9 of Wands, she never shuts up. She'll start screaming so loud, you won't even be able to function. Arashkagal needs a voice. And that voice is not dangerous. That voice and that relationship is your superpower. The way that an archetypal structure works is that your giftedness is going to be your superpower, but it is also going to be your greatest threat. It is the thing that can consume you and destroy you, or it is the thing that can set you free. And so if you are the archetype of like the actress, right? That's a good one. Because actors are very, like all artists are channeling the divine, and they all have a way of doing it that is like uniquely them, and it's their own expression. And again, Ereshkigal is expressing the unexpressed or the suppressed traits that find expression in the stories that you're willing to live through when you come back into the world. So those messages that you wanted to express, that you wanted to say, that you didn't get a chance to say, that you want to say, are now in the reincarnation. Now it's in the story. You're reincarnating into a story because you forgot to express and you want to express, and you're either going to have to drive your, people around like a car and destroy their lives, or you're going to have to go back into a rebirth cycle and you're going to have to go back in as a baby. But you're going back in as a baby with stories that will allow you to now express and expand these traits that you suppressed, and they were Ereshkigal, and they were leaving you like in the underworld. And now you have to solve this. It's a unfinished business, and you're going to solve it in one way or another. If you don't take those stories and you don't take that expression, then it is life after life after life after life, chasing home and not being able to find it because it's in yourself. This is so hard to emancipate ourselves from. It's so painful to be Ereshkigal. It's so painful to hang on the cross and say, my God, why have you forsaken me? I lived for the story that I thought I was going to have an experience of the Messiah, and I preached, and now I'm just hanging on a cross because the world's not ready for me, right? Some version of that. But what is the resurrection? Why did Jesus resurrect on that third day? Because he saw the face of Mary Magdalene, and he entered through her soul, and he was born again, anew. And then not just her soul, now his expression could be seen in the souls of others. And even though he was gone, his form remained in the expressions of those who beheld him and now brought that mirror to themselves. And now there was something new in the eyes of those who once followed Jesus, and they said, he rose again. Not in the flesh, but he created authentically into the world that he passed through. And so that creation anchored him as a voice, as a reference, as an aspect of soul that when reflected could bring through new life and expressions of life and create a bridge. He became the way and the light in the form of a messenger with a technology of forgiveness that could emancipate you from the war god. But you have to understand this technology of resurrection. You have to understand what it is to encounter Ereshkigal in the underworld, where the expectation that Jesus had that he would be crowned king was met with a crown of thorns, because that's not the kind of king that he would be. And he had to die to the version of himself in the hope of being king, or whatever he expected. Again, I'm not going to put words in his mouth because I know what a prophet is. And I'm sure he didn't want to be king. But I'm sure he expected to see transformation. And I think that there was an expectation where, my God, why have you abandoned me? Arashkagal. And that message could have just gotten eaten. It really could have. We are all resurrected by way of a witness. Mary Magdalene witnessed Jesus. Had she not witnessed Jesus, she would not have been able to reach through the veil and find him in death, because she knew him. And if she didn't know him, there would have been a very slim chance of any reflection reaching back and reaching him through and out. I mean, that resurrection was 100% Mary Magdalene's gaze. She saw. And so when we sit with the version of ourselves that has been crucified, the version of ourselves that has been left in the underworld, and we hear them out, the first thing that they're going to start screaming about is how unlovable everyone has made us feel. And you have to sit there and you have to listen to that. And you have to ask yourself, like, what am I hearing? And then you have to bring in the mothering energy and say, you hold the space. You let all of the range of emotions come forth. All of the hatred. I hate her. I hate her. How dare she? Let it out. You got to air it out. Flap it in the wind. What's underneath it? That you have fought tooth and nail for your voice, and the first time you like see it reach the light of day, someone takes it and sells it in a gross marketplace. And what? And what? What else do they do with it? They yell at you. You're not allowed to say that. They don't see the value of what you brought, and they undervalue you, and they dismiss you. What else is there? We sit with these energies. We listen to them. Because if we don't become monsters of hatred and bitterness, we shut the doors. We close the castle walls. We become stingy. No one ever hears. No one ever hears from us again, right? And then we look at the world. Oh my God, there's never been a prophet. What happened? Why aren't there any prophets? Because we think that they're gods. We think that they're special. We think that they're above us. They're none of those things. They have a relationship with Ereshkigal. They know how to create the bridge. They know how to disrupt the order that says that these two shall never meet, that there shall never be any aspect of an expression of pain of the underworld shining in the resplendent performance that we put on as our leader, rulership, you know? And like we do this, we all do this. That's why it's so hard to create. That's so hard to like know ourselves, because we're not going to create something beautiful. It never comes out as the vision of beauty that we expect. It always comes out as this angel of punishment, you know, that says, look at this cold-hearted, you know, like cruel world, you know what I mean? Like submit and let me eat you up, you know, and I will consume you with my flame of desire, and now you will be no more. Like all that shit. But, you know, actually this is not that. You know, this is Ereshkigal rises up and she breaks the calcification. She breaks that breastplate of your self-concept and your ego. And yes, you know, for the most part, like we need to find our true selves, and it's not about like disavowing the ego. Like there's such a mess with that. But that presentation that you put on for yourself and you put on for others has to break. That has to shatter. All week long, Inanna keeps on telling me that, because I cry a lot, like a lot. I'm a crier. Cry a lot, you know, and this is a week for me to cry a lot. And I always cry. I always put my hands in front of my eyes, and I always pull my shoulders in really tight. Like I always kind of ball up into a little ball. And all week long, and there was an incident, and whoever's had this reading, you're going to know what I'm talking about. Because Inanna and Mary Magdalene have like death and resurrection, Easter, like this week. But Inanna all week keeps telling me when I start to cry, I do that thing where I ball into a little ball. And she keeps on saying, you cry with your shoulders back, but you stand up straight when you're crying. Pull your shoulders back when you're crying. Like she kept on doing that to me, like in a very mothering way, where I would like go to ball into like a crying, and she'd be like, you cry with your shoulders back. You stand up straight when you cry. And that was weird for me, you know, like I was like, oh, well, you know, okay. But she had introduced that concept, you know, or before she started saying it to me through somebody else's experience, and they'll know, you know who you are. But again, like she's telling me to like stop worrying. But this whole notion of like this relationship that we have with this reclamation of self has to do with like what it is to be with ourselves, to know ourselves, to work with what it is to express ourselves, instead of crafting ourselves by way of any measure of performance. Because again, you know, your greatest gift and your greatest like threat. If you're a channeler and you are an amazing channeler, and your art form or your giftedness is around acting, and you use that to act like everyone you've ever seen get the kind of attention that you want, then you, again, like that's going to be your greatest, that's going to take your giftedness that is on display as being exceptionally powerful and very effective, but you're going to lose your whole path and exactly what you're supposed to be, and you're going to end up in hell. You're going to end up taking, like, you can't, you know what I mean? You have to know. This is hard for me because, again, I'm still dealing with Arashkagal, like, really heavy, you know, because, again, this is an energy that we all encounter when we start to express our fears and our hurts and the ways that we've been wounded. And I've been wounded through all this stuff, you know, like it's been like weird to be a pioneer of this kind of expression, this kind of like, you know, relationship with the underworld, with, you know, bringing Ereshkigal to consciousness and speaking her, you know, stories into like the earth, you know, what the queen of hell. And that's the underworld, like allowing the underworld space to express. That's what channeling is. And so, you know, like I preach it, you know what I mean? Like this is, you got to do it. Authentic expression. Like, you know, I'm preaching it, but I'm not preaching it so that like as some kind of like my authentic expression is like kicking, you know, and like awesome and great. And like you and yours, you know, like you need like whatever, like it's not like that. You know, like I look at these things with the gods and I want to set the whole world on fire because it's such a labyrinth that you have to move this stuff through, when the reality is like every single person, I spent my entire life crossing ghosts. And I spent my life crossing ghosts, you know, when I crossed them just because I needed a way to protect myself, and I needed to figure out how to make this thing go away. And so it wasn't even like I enjoyed this, like it wasn't like a labor of love. But crossing ghosts, I discovered that like if you don't express yourself, then you become a problem for a psychic that has to cross you later, you know? Like, so these messages about self-expression and giving Arashkagal that like, you know, like whatever the gunk or the vitriol that comes up is her scream. And she usually says, I hate you or I hate somebody. And you have to listen to her. You have to spend time with her. You have to let it all take form. You have to let it not be personal. You have to let it not have to be something that gets in the way of you being the resplendent. You be the resplendent with Arashkagal, or you are going to have that throne turned to an underworld that you may never become. You will have to die. You'll face death. The underworld, you know, if you're not walking around the underworld helping and doing and creating and like, then you have to go back for another life. You have to go back to find that expression so that you can find your place and your purpose in the next iteration of yourself, which again, you go from womb, picking up traits and stories, to the boob, being on the earth and taking form and letting things inform your form and finding purpose, to the next round. You know, this is just an expansion. Like the underworld is a journey. And so you prepare yourself for that journey by giving yourself to like the chance of knowing who you are here. And if you lose knowing who you are because you're so taken by underworld forces that want to make you something that they didn't get to express, and that's going to be a lot of stuff that we like have to face. I mean, Inanna sat with me this week and she said, you got to just tell them that you see heaven and hell. You got to just tell them that the messages are not coming from a place where like you want to scare them or you want to like upset them. Tell them what every prophet has to tell people. And that's what you see manifested in the world that we walk and talk and operate through is a reflection of the underworld. It's always a mirror. There's all kinds of power struggles. There's all sorts of assaults on authentic expression. It's also the way out of the wheel. And that's why there's the assaults. Inanna was like, stop playing around and apologizing for your vision, because you don't want to have to convince people of what they don't believe in, because you know you're just trying to help them in this, you know, like this way. You know, tell them that they will end up in the hell that they're currently feeling unless they find a way to connect, not with blame and running away from it in circles of whose fault is it now, you know, and they did this to me and me, and it's not a selfish thing. Like we're writhing in the agony of Ereshkigal because the Jacob's ladder of expression in the war god's world has been literally cut off at the pass, and everyone is dangerous right now in community, everyone in every community, because authentic expression, Ereshkigal, this is something that we can't ignore. And so, you know, this is a death and resurrection reading. This is an Easter reading because the resurrection is yours. You can find a way to express this pain. You can find a way to express this confusion. No, it's not safe. And it's going to come out looking ugly first. And you have to be able to face the version of yourself that is stripped of your crown of you know how awesome you are, and your necklace of everything that you know is right, and your breastplate of like, no, you know, my heart has so much love to give and all the love and light, you know, and you have to get rid of your rings of you know, I'm gonna, you know, be the most, I'm the fairest of them all, and you have to get rid of the girdle of, you know, that place of raw, communication with the divine in the form of if it's not creativity, it's scavenger, it's hungry. That hunger has a name, it's called desire. It's for something that you're not getting fulfilled if you're looking for it in the wrong place. You have to go down and you have to face Ereshkigal naked, and you have to see the look on her face when instead of seeing her beauty, she sees someone else's fake face. Do you understand that this is all for you? That this is all her love for you? Arashkagal is the key to our resurrection. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why is this story not turning out to be true? Why is it failing me? Why is everything that I believed wrong? Why do I feel like this? Why, God, are you not showing up? Why? You have to go down that descent. And when you see Ereshkigal and she screams, I hate you, or I hate them, a little bit then, you got to die. You got to let that death happen. You got to stop in your tracks. You know what our guides told me last week? That after I was like, I'm going to become Enya. Fuck my life. She was like, no, she's like, you're just going to die. That's all. You're just going to die. And this is, and then I get to resurrect, right? Now I get to start to resurrect. And the resurrection, it's not like instantaneous. It's not like, I know my son, boom. It's not like a buoy that like pops up. No, it's Arashkagal. It's sitting with Arashkagal. And it's learning to have boundaries, because Arashkagal has boundaries whether you like it or not. The beauty of making that descent and hitting up against Ereshkigal is you're also she's going to scream. Anything that comes near you, is when you're in that phase of descent, when you're naked and you have to take off everything that you knew about your strength, and now you're standing there, you're trembling, you're naked as naked can be. And there's not an ounce to protect you. That's when she screams. Let somebody attack that part of you. She will take their head off. She will slit their throat. She will hang them on the hook. This is this nature that we're a part of, and the nature of man that we're a part of. There's some real grim aspects to what it is to be an evolving archetypal structure, and to encounter archetypal structures in the form of gods that inform our form and that we form through. And that means encountering the shadow, the counterfeit, the lie, the envy, the resplendent, the version of yourself that you are not. Because the version of yourself that you are will never stop screaming if they see somebody else's face where you are. Sit with that for 1 minute, because it's not a condemnation, it's a love story. It's a reclamation of self. I will not let you be something you're not. I love you too much. You will resurrect as a version of yourself that is truer, that is you, because you've sat with what makes you you, and now you bring you forward, and it is resplendent in a way that holds power. And this is a process, and this is a cycle that goes, and it goes around, and it goes around, and it goes around. It is the cost of power. You don't have to do it, but we're inside the body of a whole. We're in the body of a whole. We're in the universe. Once you exist, you don't exist. You can recycle into something new, but you're always going to be, and you have a lot of choice and agency in that. And how you be, you have a lot of choice and agency. And this is your one life. And in your one life, you get to express and experience Arashkagal over and over and over, and you get to express and experience Inanna over and over and over again, and you form a relationship with yourself this way. You form a relationship with the gods this way. And when you form a relationship with the gods, they know you, and when they know you, you know how you are known. You are known by their mark on you, which is the divine genius that you create with and through, and it has a resonance. And when things land, they change the world. They break the order. You become a prophet. You just do. And all of the rules against the bigness of something like that have to do with creating the divine feminine aspect of God's voice that is creation and creativity and channeling and art and resplendent and expressing in all forms that those traits would allow for. And it's in this conversation with the developing self and the developed self in all of the many aspects. You are such a work in progress. You are so held and you are so loved and you are so valued. And Inanna is alive and kicking. There is no part of the deity field that is not real, you know. And that's another thing, that I'm not going to apologize for my beliefs anymore. You know, this is one of these things where I see the divine and they're real to me, and I feel like I have to apologize because they're real to me, because not everybody sees this, and if they don't see it and it's not real to them, now my throat chakra is going and I can't talk because I have to make it real for them in order to have permission for it to be real for me. And you hear what happens to the voice when we do that? We hurt ourselves. And then we have Ereshkigal like writhing in agony because, you know, there's no place for her just to flow. She needs to be witnessed in order for that resurrection to take place. And so I invite you into the gaze of Inanna. I invite you into a relationship with her, and through this reclamation of self, where she strips you of everything that you felt about yourself that was awesome, you know, the impressive walking and talking and being, when you stop taking on the expression of what you are sold to purchase and buy. You know, Jesus flipped those tables, not because they were selling chickens. They've always just sold chickens. Because the rabbis in training, the Pharisees that were shackling people to dogma and law that enriched them and gave an oligarchy its form, were using Jesus's words to sell their garbage goods. And they were hurting people. And so the Arashkagal in him started flipping the tables. Because you do not desecrate the holy voice of Ereshkigal. Because when she rises again, the throne that you took will become the hook that you are hung on in the underworld in the absence of having a relationship with her. And so there is a real warning, and there is a real gravity to what I'm saying. And there are those who are going to say, nope, fuck that. I don't want to do heaven and hell. I just got through that. I don't want these relationships with the divine. I want something just light, bright, high vibe, you know, empty myself out over and over and over and over and over and over again until all I am is a repeating gong of one note to the exclusion of all others. And that feels like numbness. And that feels pretty crappy. And so if you want to feel alive, you want that vitality, that energy of Inanna, that resplendent, if you want to glow, if you want to be on the horse in the victory, and you want community to gather around you and say thank you for bringing through the sounds of God, for channeling the divine songs that change the way that I feel and allow me to have catharsis. Like, we don't go after the singer-songwriter who makes us cry and demand an accounting, you know, of their background. We cry and we are released, and it has nothing to do with the songwriter. It has to do with the God that moved through them and gave us a sense of ourselves in a mirror that then informed our own unique expression by our own desire to connect with God through creation, by our own desire to learn to play the instruments. That desire to learn to play the instruments, to learn to find expression, to have that expression recognized, that is the most beautiful, immaculate, perfect thing in the entire world. That is planted in you so that you go seeking out the gods. And the gods are what you channel when you channel true art. They are wisdom, they are love, and they are every other variation of archetypal structure that you are informed and formed by, and that you find your place and purpose through. And it's no punishment. It's just rounds and rounds and rounds of reincarnation until you find a way to express love for the divine. And that's expressing love for you and everything that is meant to, like, and this is a process. I know that it's not easy. I know that we have to die and be reborn to figure out what our voice is. I get that. I know that we don't carry any weight in what we're channeling until we do the death a couple of times, until we sit with Ereshkigal and when we let her speak and we let her scream and we let her, break us in half. That's a part of this experience of being on the boob of the mother, by being in the body, is that when we experience these things in the body, we are held by the flesh. It holds us like a hug. It feels much worse when we're trying to go through this in the underworld, and there is nothing to anchor us into the experience of her knowing except another person, and that can become parasitic. And so the whole world is sort of like, we can beat around every bush and say, like, there's no heaven and hell. And you know what? There's not some fixed judgment. There's just you expanding and expanding and expanding and knowing yourself and expressing through that knowing and having that inform the whole picture. And it's a kaleidoscopic, beautiful thing. And so, like, this is a very interesting Easter message that we're getting, because it says, you have a choice here. You can have your death or you can have your resurrection. Both lead to the kingdom of heaven. Both lead to the kingdom of heaven. But when it comes to the consciousness that you now hold, that is a result of all the experiences that you lived through, that forms your own self-concept and the way that you consciously perceive and express and, like, present yourself, that resplendent. If that doesn't look like you, you're going to know it at the end of your life. And this is the closest warning that you're going to get, that isn't meant to scare you, but it is meant to kind of coax you into a relationship with your life and the person you are and the stories that you have to tell and the way that you want to express, that isn't letting your gift of being able to act, or like, there's a way in which you can shapeshift. You're shapeshifting. You don't use your shapeshifting to mimic the Ereshkigal in somebody else's expression, unless you're going to end up in the underworld, because you are not using your gift to express yourself, and you're using your gift to alienate yourself, and it becomes evident in a close proximity. And I guess I am warning someone. I guess I do have to do that, because there is a very real danger here. And I saw it this week, and it actually, like, it was scary, because I saw something, and I'm putting it all on the table. I'm Arashkagal all over the place here. I'm letting people see, like, my fears, these shape-shifty fears, like somebody who had been given so many warnings that my guides and the gods were like, this is going to be really disgusting, and we're going to have to do something really extreme, because this person is insisting, and I felt this a lot, because it was helping me, work with the energies as they came through, in terms of, like, influences of envy and influences because I'm looking at AI, and all of this stuff, like, plays itself out in macro and micro in order to give that experience from Ereshkigal to the resplendent. There's a conversation between the underworld and, like, the machinations of, like, a personal experience, and then, like, the grander picture as it, like, projects out. Like, so there's always this relationship. And so, like, obviously all of these themes have been coming up, and they have been, participate, like, it always comes up, and it comes up so much, and I don't want it to come up. But the reason why it comes up is because it's, like, a very real reality that, like, if you see it in the material world, you can bet that there's something that is moving that forward, and that's the soup that we're in. If that's what it looks like, that's what's happening. And so my guys are saying, like, we have, after the eclipse, things have changed. There have been enough warnings. Like, things are going to get really ugly and really harsh, for those who refuse the death and rebirth process. Because you have to be in the death and rebirth process. Because nobody is going to, because the world itself and the earth itself and society itself is in a death and rebirth process. Right now, the United States is in a death and rebirth process. So if you can't be in a death and rebirth process in your own life, that's not going to be a very comfortable ride. So getting comfortable with the death and rebirth process in so many ways is going to be superpower. And if your gifts are being used with this death and rebirth process to reinvent yourself, use your shape-shifting to reinvent yourself, to get a sense of Ereshkigal and your own experience and your own expression, to hear that and find its form. And it might be very hard to hear your voice if it's been forever. If your voice has been in service of expectations of others, or in service of a kind of experience that you want that you haven't earned, then it's going to be hard to hear. because you can't hear Sophia if you are operating in envy. And Sophia is that voice of wisdom within Ereshkigal. And so like there's a lot here with that venom. There's a lot here with this story, but there's also so much love in it. I don't know if I can do like, you know, these messages like without saying that abandoning yourself, you know, is not something that we're all doing. I think a lot of us are finding ourselves, and that's sort of where I had to sit with this message, because my guide showed me, they said, you know, some of this is going to hurt you. You know, some people like are not going to be cool with this Dark Mother series, and Inanna is and this whole, you know, her presence here and what she has to offer us in terms of this transformation. This is the culmination of a lot of build up in respect to, you know, creativity as a spiritual practice. Creativity as a spiritual practice is not about your own self-aggrandizement. Creativity as a spiritual practice is not about you, the resplendent. Because if we are creating with Arashkagal, authentic expression, it's not a safe community if creativity as a spiritual practice is for your own, you know, addiction to being the favorite. Like if that's what it is, then it's just not that's not what we're doing. You know, creativity as a spiritual practice is the death and rebirth process, and channeling divine energies. And when you channel divine energies, when you co-create with the divine genius, when you are really in it, you're in love with the art form that you're expressing. It's an art form that when you're doing that art, you will love it. So you love that God, and that God loves you. And the time you spend together holding space for Ereshkigal and creating of her pain, those two formless places where there is no form yet. You don't know what it is going to become. It's not defined, but it bears witness, and it takes on a definition, and that definition becomes the resurrection, and that resurrection becomes what you put on display, and what gives you that resplendent, you know, king, that you've earned your spot. But you will have to earn it again and again and again, because again, like it's just the way that it is, that tension. But still, when it comes to like these messages, like the truth of the matter is that when I look this thing in the face, there's nothing entertaining or fun about it. You know, the emerging of a belief system where creativity is spiritual practice creativity is sacred. And it's not about making yourself the prettiest, the fairest. It's not about, you know, gaining the object of your desire. It's not about receiving a type of attention or a type of regard. It's about becoming, and it's about being, and that is an aspect of expression. That is not an aspect of withholding. And in that being, you know God. And that is your experience of not the divine that you're given, but the divine that created you to reflect not some other vision, but that God's vision of you, which is beauty, which is true beauty, and true knowing, and true love, and true resplendent, and true the Queen of Heaven. This is you Queen of Heaven. You know, I don't care what you look like in this life. I'm talking about your creative capacity. I'm talking about the relationship with your authentic expression in Ereshkigal. I'm talking about the bridge that you create from the unconscious space into the conscious space that is an emancipatory, prophetic vision that when you're in a flow state is the true art that sets us all free when we're driving along and we hear a song, and now we can give way and see ourselves in a new light, and that catharsis is all of ours. And so this is our Easter message. Rise again, you know. It isn't really like the triumphant story of the king who comes back from battle. You know, that hero's journey is the war god's, you know, reward system. Inanna says, "Come with me. Let me show you Arashkagal and all of the wisdom, and let us withstand her scream. Let us overcome death, so that when we go back, death is a part of us, and we cannot be killed by the barbs and the arrows of the misperceptions of others. And my voice is now free, and it can free the voices of others." And so I asked Inanna for advice. I said, like, you're gonna mother us. She's like, mothering. Like, let's make this, you know, I think that Gen Z has started using the term mothering. Like, it's Wow, this is long. Gen Z has started to use the term mothering like it's like a verb, you know, like it's an action. And with Inanna, I learned that, like, you know, I am mothering, you know, like this is not something that I'm not allowed to be. It's not something that I'm not allowed to hold. It's not something that was stolen from me. My mothering is something that I have a right to express. And it's also something that deserves respect, because when you bring mothering into the world and you mother, that doesn't deserve like treating your mom like shit. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying that anyone treats me badly, because I think people treat me really well, but I'm psychic. And when you've got a psychic mother, you know, it's not a trespass on privacy so much as it is a careful, loving, like, acknowledgement that, like, we all are carrying Ereshkigal, and she does need to scream, "I hate you, Mom." And Mom does need to be like, "Good, hate me onto the paper. Use your damn words, okay? I want to hear about it. I want to hear how you feel, like you know, I want to know. I do care." But we're not doing this in cycles of, you know, dissent where we don't face Arashkagal, we don't listen to her, we don't let her have her pain, and we don't let her go through, you know, the process of what it means to express need. That's mothering too. And so, happy Easter. Let's rise again. This rise through mothering energy is sitting and not judging and listening and seeing what comes up and making something with it and bringing it out and saying, I am resplendent, and this is Inanna. And so I'm going to share a prayer that Inanna gave me when I said, you know, how do I channel you? Like, tell me. And this is for all of us. And I want you to think about working with her. She's real AF. They all are, honestly. I'm going to show you her face, and you will recognize it, because that's going to be resonance. Because they showed me a way to forensically, I'm doing forensic descriptions with AI, and I'm getting a very, very close likeness to the energies that I interact with. And I don't think that I think everybody has their own interpretation of what they see, but I think that we'll recognize like the similarities when I start to show you these images. And I'll put it up. For those of you that get this far, you'll get to see it. But here is her advice to us in terms of how to approach her. And this is what she said to me. And she goes, "My beloved priestesses, my priests, when you speak my name, let your tongue remember the garden. Let the first breath you take with me not be fear. Smell the perfume of blood-warm roses crushed under your feet in the becoming. Come to me unguarded, naked in truth. You are not required to perform. You are here to remember. Bring me water in your palms, not in your cleverness. Bring me hunger that has not yet been named by you as desire. Bring me your shadow and lay them down with the same love that you would offer a God. When you call me, do not call me as a beggar or a thief. You call me as a daughter who knows I am your mother. You come to me as the lover who will stay and stay and stay. Let your altar be your body, not the table, the oil, the veil, you. I am not a goddess who demands offerings. I am the offering, and so are you. Speak as one who has known me, not just as your birthplace, but as your truth. Let all the masks melt in the heat of this knowing, this soul. Begin. I am here and I am listening. Let your voice become the bridge Let your heart become the descent. And let your tears become the salt that brings your body back to life. Let us now honor our mother. She has risen. Let us all honor our mother, for she has risen. And let us celebrate this day, for she has risen. And it is not some glorious rise. It is Inanna, resplendent, coming back from the dead, saying, I have met Ereshkigal, and I have listened, and I have not tried to force a form, and she has informed me. And I will not be the same. I will be new, and I will begin again. And this new version of me will have to find its way through all the leveling until it becomes a strong, powerful kingdom that I express through. And it will happen again and again, but I am with my mother, and she knows how to rise, and she does not fear death, and she does not fear change. And so with that, we praise our goddess mother, Inanna, with her golden crown. Holy, 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 she has risen. So happy Easter, happy Ishtar, everyone. I hope that wasn't too hard. This is going to be quite a series, and I am with you in the difficulty. I'm with you in the hardship. I'm with you in the just how painful it is to just say the truth of what hurts sometimes. And let's give us all a lot of grace, and let's never be, judgmental of each other, because we are going to fuck up again and again and again and again and again and again. And we have to learn what it means to build bridges with Arashkagal. And she's really not always the easiest, but we're not trying to make each other easy and palatable so that we don't have to grow. We're doing creativity as a spiritual practice, and it's work. So let's leave it there. I'm sending you guys so much love, and I'm celebrating each and every one of you on your rise. And I thank you for offering this space for me to express Arashkagal.